Hi, I'm Arthur, and this is part 14 in a 20-part series I am doing covering the most popular and most renowned, the best chapters of Space Marines out there, because everybody loves them like a freshly made Build-A-Bear. But much like a Build-A-Bear you didn't have your wish prepared for in your mind when you were about to insert the heart into its center, I am without a soul, and you must now be asking yourself, wait, what did he just say? But also, do I need to have seen the other parts to understand this one? No, but if you did so, I would be filled with enough whimsy and joy that it could revitalize my cold, dead spirit. I swear these things are getting more elaborate as time goes on. Regardless, you see the title of this video. I'm not exaggerating. 40k has a lot of people you would agree with are the poster child. Probably the Ultramarines at best, but maybe the Blood Angels? As in the next edition, they seem to be getting their dick tickled by GW, which is nice after the travesty that was the majority of their minis that had come out in 10th edition. But the thing is, for the Ultramarines, if you are not in Ultramar or in a mainstay offensive, you probably will never see an Ultramarine. For the Blood Angels, same deal. And hell, they are in the Imperium Nihilus, so if you are, cursed with that status effect known as being in the Imperium Nihilus, well, you will never see a Blood Angel. But you know what's canonical? What's weirdly the most seen chapter in the Imperium? If you are a guardsman, you have a high chance of seeing these guys in comparison to anybody else that is a Space Marine. Yeah, it's the Mentors. The Mentors, originally being referred to as the Mentor Legion, are up there with the Crimson Fists, the Ultramarines, and the Blood Angels as one of the first chapters to be introduced to the setting. Being shown off in Rogue Trader, which is awesome, I gotta say, but the thing is they don't get nearly as much credit as they probably should, all things considered. They have such a unique combat doctrine and way of going about them that they're borderline heretical, but the Inquisition and the High Lord seem to love them. They're basically one of the most unnervingly efficient chapters in the setting, and I feel like if I didn't include them, that wishless heart that rests at the center of my being would lose a little bit more of what little humanity I cling on to. So, I want to break them down, give you a full-size video about who they are, what they are, and what they do, but before we do, Papa's got bills to pay. So, let's talk about gamer subs, shall we? Having gotten back from Adepticon last week, I gotta say I was burning the candle at both ends, to the point where I realized I should probably cut back on caffeine when I get back, and I've been suffering for it ever since. No joke, I was bombing like 3 white monsters a day just to stay conscious and play all the games and talk to all the people that I needed to. Business as usual, I suppose. I know you're surprised I'm not talking about blitzing through gamer subs, but here's the kicker. At the end of those days, to make sure that I could quell my heart from destroying me once and for all, I'd mix up a batch of good old gamer subs AFK to cool off and end the day. Specifically, the after hours flavor, and it made me kind of relax slowly and unwind throughout the night, get a whole night's rest, sleep for the whole night, and wake up feeling kind of rested, which is very difficult for me as someone who's pretty, wired most days. Using a gentle combination of magnesium and melatonin, this stuff will not make you pass out at your desk, but it will help improve your quality of sleep and maybe help you get to bed a little bit sooner. So, using code BONES on a checkout gets you 10% off your normal order. Why not grab a shaker cup alongside that too? Because you'd be helping out the channel, helping out me, and also giving yourself a good night's rest, which you definitely deserve. Just look at yourself. Look at those eye bags. Disgusting. You really should work on those. Thanks again to GamerSubs for sponsoring this channel. And let's get back to the Mentors. A lot of the references I pull from are from different sources, as the Mentors are A, not spoken about much for something that has such a tenure, B, keep their chapter history in lore a mystery, and C, the majority of the stuff we got about them in the modern history of 40k was in the relatively recent years, as it was from the Emperor's Spears book by Aaron Dembski Bowden, which kicks ass, and yes, I know I talk about it a lot, but I love that book, so there's a lot of references in that to the modern day chapter, as well as a few White Dwarf pieces of information that I'm going to be pulling from. But to say that they have a weird origin is an understatement, and I think that's as good a spot as any to start at. In a weird piece of trivia that almost never comes up except for when it's just duplicates of 3 numbers, all chapters are technically numbered in order to keep track so that there are no more than 1,000 chapters and no more than 1,000,000 Marines, which usually we never either get there or there's too many Marines because of the Black Templars, but whatever. Gotta prevent it from Horus Heresy heresying again. So the chapter number 888 was created during the Bastion founding, aka the 25th founding. This founding is a bit mysterious, as I didn't find a listed purpose for it, but from what I can tell, the chapters created for it were used to reinforce key areas of the Imperium that needed that kind of brotherhood camaraderie thing, a bastion to keep the dark away kind of deal. Which is why chapter 888, the Star Scorpions, were created here alongside the Emperor's Spears. They were sent off to reinforce the Celestial Lions in Ilara's Vale, a key piece of area in the Imperium's domain. These 3 chapters would combine their iconography in a show of brotherhood, which would be the lion, the scorpion, and the trident, in order to make the logo for the Adeptus Velari, their new group that was dedicated to defending Ilara's Vale from anyone with the nuts to show up and walk around like they owned the place that wasn't them. Unfortunately, they had the fun condition known as bad fucking luck syndrome, not like Lamenters. Basically, this led them to have a whole host of momentary lapses in judgment as well as just plain old bad luck. Like, for one, the gene seed of the Star Scorpions ended up mutating slowly to not create Chaos Space Marines, surprisingly, but actually it just became kind of inert. Like, Marines just couldn't be produced from it. It just wouldn't turn an initiate into a full-fledged Marine. It would just kill them. This is not good, as this meant the chapter could never fully recover from losses of any kind, but alongside that you had the Celestial Lions, who were just really nice guys, and it led to them standing up for the little guy just a little bit too much, aka they pissed off the Inquisition and were hunted to near extinction. The bad luck didn't really end there for the Star Scorpions as well, I should note, as they ended up getting lost in the warp for what was externally centuries. I think it was stated 1,000 years, though I could be wrong. And when they came out, that was when they ended up turning into a warband of Chaos Marines that I believe worshipped Slaanesh. Their aesthetic kind of matches that. Very, very flamboyant, very perfection and whatnot. But yeah, they came out as a warband known as the Pure. But the thing is, due to them having to rely on non-Space Marines quite a lot due to their dwindling numbers prior to them being contorted into the Pure, the Star Scorpions got really good at manning the armies of the Imperium to reduce their numbers being lost. This transferred over into them being the Pure and having entire warbands of Chaos Cultists, this group being called the Exilarchy, a bunch of individuals who had been exiled that banded together under the Pure's leadership, and now they're one of the biggest threats in Ilara's Vale. Bad luck still keeps going because this group was basically going to try and conquer every part of, Ilara's Vale. Now, I will state that this whole Exilarchy business kind of weirdly parallels the Mentor Legion and the subject of today's, video, but we'll get to that later. So that's 2 of the 3 of the Adeptus Velari out of the way. What bad luck did the Spears have to deal with? The fallout of all the shit that I just mentioned. They had to save what remaining lions they could, fight the Pure, and also protect their worlds from the Exilarchy, which is probably the worst fate of all because they are now stretched over an entire area of space that was originally supposed to be defended by 3 Space Marine chapters, which is, pretty bad. But with the Scorpions being initially declared missing, then declared dead, then declared traitors, the number 888 was up for grabs. So during the next founding, the 26th founding, a new chapter was given the colors of the Scorpions and their number, which I don't think is very common. The colors, that is. I do believe most chapters only keep the colors if they keep the name. Like some chapters, due to sacrificing themselves in holy combat, they come back and are reincarnated with brand new fresh gene seed, which I think is kind of cool. A good example would be the Soul Drinkers. The entirety of the original chapter was wiped out, and in their modern incarnation they were given 100% fresh gene seed, so they were given the same colors as the original Soul Drinkers, and they decided to maintain the chapter's kind of culture. But that's kind of all I can think of that kept that tradition alive. I think it is to say that the newly created mentors probably just didn't care to change the colors. You guys are going to find out pretty swiftly once we cover them that they are hyper-pragmatists who care nothing for pageantry or display. They care only about results. Even coloring their armor with camo colors if the need arises, and changing their battlefield tactics depending on where they're at. So, suck on that one, Raptors, I guess. You're not really special. That leaves you with only one thing, and that's your genetic curse causing chronic depression, so kiss my nuts. Regardless, the mentors were created from the stock of Rabute Gilliman in order to prevent the gene flaws of the Scorpions from ever happening again, and basically just give them a clean slate. This has led to them being pretty normal, pretty stable, and less likely to be mutated. But there is a theory here, I disagree with it, but again, we'll cover it later, that they have a minor mutation that causes them to have obsessive-compulsive tendencies towards study and warfare, which is going to bring us to the next section of this video, where I explain the tactics, the general overview of the mentors themselves, now that you know that their history, and, a bunch of stuff that you probably have questions about, like what even is a mentor? Why were they called the Legion before? Why was their chapter symbol an owl and now it's a hawk? Why do birds scare me? If the shadow dancers knock on your window 3 times in 3 successions, does that mean it's time? We'll answer these questions and more, just like don't open the blinds of your windows, okay? The mentors were introduced in Rogue Trader. Duh. So the name, the Mentors Legion, was kind of established prior to the introduction of the mainstream canon and lore of the game we know and yell at each other about today. So they had to kind of change it so they didn't piss off the nerds who would be like, well, actually, it isn't really a legion, as that's illegal. Okay, dweeb, tonight the Shadow Dancers and the Knights of Bitter Silence will be upon you, and the knocking will never cease. Thus, the mentors were introduced to the setting with their weird quirk that they have an obsession with studying the art of warfare, where everyone in the setting is usually very obstinate about their own specific brand of warfare, trying to make the circle block fit in the square hole. The mentors are defiant to that ideology. Where some chapters want to be berserkers no matter what, these guys will change their doctrine in order to fit the situation. Basically, the big thing with them is that they will always adapt to a situation, as they find some kind of satisfaction in the puzzle of a novel conflict. It's why the High Lords of Terra hold them in high regards and usually throw them at a problem that we don't know anything about yet. Got Rogue Imperial General, known for esoteric tactics, send in the mentors. Got a weird issue with some kind of alien species that has as of yet been undocumented. The mentors could probably figure it out. Need to corral some weird Imperial defector Space Marine chapter that literally did nothing wrong but are just seceding due to moral reasons. Send in the Minotaurs for that one, and also get your favorite black marker out. We are about to engage in some document redaction later. Regardless, the mentors are very much on the scale of Marines that believe that the ends justify the means, albeit not nearly as cruel as the others. More in a, they are probably very secular and do not give their weapons names type of deal, vying to take in and test the newest and most experimental weapons the Mechanicus can give to the chapter, with the chapter master trying out everything before, spreading it amongst his chapter. This has led to them being on the receiving end of highly experimental and modified designs for something like a bolter or a power armor or even specialist weapons. But you can have so many of these things floating around, and because of that, it's led to them having this very vast collection of what other chapters would refer to as holy relics, but the mentors simply refer to them as useful. They use these relics depending on the Marine, as they have such a slavish desire to be the best at war they could ever be that a lot of them have marginally different tactics and different specializations. Though it is a good time to note that this isn't just because they have a weird obsession with advancing their tactical doctrine. It's also because they are so non-codex compliant, it almost would make a Space Marine blush. Having 1,000 Marines and companies designated with helmet color is kind of the closest they get to adhering to the codex. Deploying Marines, similar to that of the Death Watch or the Iron Snakes, that is to say they have small kill teams that have a maximum of maybe 10 guys and a minimum of 1 guy and a few of his higher end slaves, and they head to any battlefield within the entirety of the Imperium, even crossing over the Cicatrix Maledictum to the Imperium Nihilus on a few occasions. This is to serve a bit of a dual purpose, like I was saying, providing fire support from their Marines. As we all know, Space Marines are incredibly powerful and able to turn the tide of battle through sheer brute power. This is one of the reasons they train so hard. Basically, them being equipped with probes that are piloted by Thralls and time-slowing devices, and people basically being able to see every flank for them, it leads to them being this whirling dervish to deal with damn near any threat. They are kind of a Batman-level threat where you may be able to get them with something once, maybe even beat them with some kind of unknown tactic, but but if you don't kill the specific Marine with that tactic, you will likely never get a second time to use it on. They are just living bloodshed on a battlefield. And I can't help but think that they are probably one of the most, if not the most singularly capable Space Marine chapters out there, maybe being seconded only by, like, the Iron Snakes, who do something similar. They are incredibly potent in a fight. That being said, the second reason they train so much and have this obsession with learning about warfare is that they actually deploy these small kill teams. Okay, well, calling them kill teams per se is not exactly accurate. They are more instructional teams. Teams that work together with the local military that is usually under a great deal of stress and war at the moment, and drill them in new tactics as well as restructure their hierarchy if they see faults in the leadership of these guardsmen that they're working with. How it shakes down is they show up, fan out whatever Marines they have to the most key locations, and become ingratiated in the military that the individual Marines are sent to assist in. They basically have the High Lord's authority to overhaul an entire military conflict as they see fit. I started this video saying that they're basically the Marine equivalent of the protagonist of 40k, and I meant it. They are very much that. They are probably, in universe, the most known chapter of Space Marines outside of the first founding. As far as military structure goes, they show up a lot, and you will see them. Maybe not in your lifetime, but your regiment probably has seen them at least once. They show up, get shit done, and I will admit there is no caveats to it here. Sure, they can be a bit overly utilitarian about the dispensation of human life, but they will win you the goddamn war. They will make guardsmen fight better and make the commanders of said guardsmen better strategists. It's actually stated that with the authority of the High Lords, you can kind of get away with all this, and one of my favorite examples as to their level of authority is if you are a high commander in some kind of regiment and you ask for help, they often demote you on the principle that asking for help means that you didn't think you were good enough on your own for the position anyway. The mentors do as their namesake would imply, mentoring platoons and regiments of the guardsmen that they are sent to assist in a way that would make them so much more efficient and basically, dispatching lazy or useless guardsmen that can't really help as much as they would. Like, I will also state for context, the level of efficiency that they are able to promote is for the Thralls of the mentors. There's the special class known as hellets that work alongside the Marines. They are so well trained and armed that there is accounts of 2 hellets being able to take on a single Space Marine and win. Now, did they come out unscathed? No. One of them ended up getting their head smushed in like one of those rubber baby doll memes that I keep using when someone asks if my headache is gone. But they were able to kill the Marine, and both did survive, which is cool. Which kind of brings us to the Hellets, the Serfs, and the Thralls of the Mentors. Probably one of the darkest things about them is that they have such a strong inclusion of human slaves. It's weird. Remember how I kept saying they were utilitarian to the point of it being unnerving? Yeah, well, they are. This is the end result of that. Basically, on their chapter monastery, on an unknown planet, probably hidden under an ocean or a mountain or some shit, they have thralls that work to labor the chapter's needs, from servicing gear, repairing crafts, and so on. That's kind of their whole job. Now, the mentors do have reasonable expectations of these thralls, never really going the full chaos. You failed doing this impossible task, time to flay you and your entire family. And by the way, did I mention that, speaking of, flaying. Yeah, the Thralls do have a tradition where when the current reigning Thrall in a family line dies, after he's dead, they flay him and add his skin with a litany of his deeds written on it as leather to the cloak to the next successor in his job in his family line, and also use his skin to bind books that they use for notes and important traditions. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why that's there. I always got the read that the mentors were hyper-secular, but maybe this is more of a serf culture thing and not like a chapter culture thing. If a serf serves, that was hard to say, long enough, and with enough distinction or their bloodline has ties to it, they can be promoted to hellet, which is better, more entertaining, I guess. Basically, once you've been promoted to hellet, you are trained and held to significantly higher a standard than your typical serf. This is because you will be serving alongside Space Marines on deployment. Normal serfs and thralls stay in the monastery and service all the things that show up there, but those serfs that reach the rank of hellet can go with the mentors out into battle and assist their needs in the field. It is a level of trust that is really dependent also on the Marine in question. Each Marine has different needs, and thusly they are assigned hellets to meet them. Marines train with their serfs and hold them to task, like making sure that they are scheduled to be ready for combat at the drop of a hat. Like this one mention that some will do combat drills with them by draining the blood of the Space Marine to near deathly levels just to see if they can fight in the shittiest condition their bodies can be in. These hellets are treated as property, unfortunately. Tools to be used by the Space Marine in order to bolster their own abilities, as well as, engage in their duty, which they see as the highest highest level of importance. Whichever one made the most sense. Does this mean they are neglected? Yeah, kinda, but hey, it's 40k. You can't really have a group of Space Marines without them being a little fucked up as a treat. So with the collection of the serfs, the battle tactics, the good ideas represented by the chapter's existence, what is the overall reputation of the mentors? Good. They are actually one of the more welcome chapters in most battlefields, as they kind of put their own ego aside as they only wish to improve the battlefield conditions for the Imperium side. Now, I will say that this does sometimes, often lead to them butting heads with Space Marine chapters who really do have that kind of I prefer my way of doing things mentality, but this often resolves itself pretty quickly as they just learn to work with each other. Now, you will ask, does them being the metaphorical successor of the Star Scorpions weigh on them at all? Nah, not really. I don't think they even really care. There was really only one time that it bothered them, and that was the plot of an entire book. But if I can make an aside here, I do like the idea that the Pure as a warband are pretty similar on the opposite end of the spectrum to the mentors. They have host armies that serve under them, and they work with normal humans, well, mutants, in order to bolster their ranks due to their diminishing ranks, while the mentors bolster the ranks of normal militaries by sending out small groups of Marines that function kind of similar to how the Pure and the Exilarchy does. It's kind of a dramatic irony thing that is kind of common in 40k stories, well, at least the best ones, or maybe it's just ADB stories, I don't know. But the mentors are a chapter of Marines that I think well deserve their spot on this list. They are a group of Marines that are well known for being kind of always here. I do wish they got more respect on par with that of like the Crimson Fist, because, well, the Crimson Fists are kind of ubiquitous with the setting at this point. But okay, so the reason why the mentors don't get a lot of representation in the modern day is because they're a very secretive chapter, and thus it's hard to do a lot of public lore because they do things in small groups. But the idea of a chapter of Marines that their whole shtick is just going around and helping garrison regiments is so unique and different that it is one of those things that if I told you this, like told you about the chapter, and you didn't know they had existed already, but I gave you the context that they were my super special do not steal homebrew, you'd probably believe me because it's so weird. It's just that they were never really reined in and no one really questioned it because they got results, which is the quickest way for you to just stay on the level in this setting. But it's also weird that other chapters don't do similar things more often. I like this divergence from the Codex Astartes that kind of breeds the most interesting chapters. But the funniest part is this divergence, in theory, really only shows up with Ultramarine successors that diverge from the Codex. They are often the weirdest of the bunch. Like, once again, the Iron Snakes. We also got the Mortifactors, and of course, the Mentors. These are all chapters that are definitely from Guilliman, but they are so different and weird, but still kind of maintain a similar idea of what the Ultramarines are. Hell, I just recently finished an audio drama of a Mortifactor scout stripping completely butt-ass naked and reenacting the final act of Predator against a Tau stealth suit with nothing but a knife, and it was fucking awesome. We remember the chapters who diverge from stuff in this way, and I think it's really cool that they exist to continue to do this. But what do you all think about the mentors? I think that they are one of the best chapters in the setting and one of my personal favorites. I know most of you at least have seen or know one person who has played them or collects them, so let me know in the comments what you think of them. Special thanks to my channel members, because with your help, I can pay off the Unghela brokers who send in the shadow dancers to keep me awake at night to distract from my evil deeds. So with your help, I can continue to keep those pesky shadow monsters away for just one night longer. Oh, and also I get to pay my editors, which I guess is kind of cool. Regardless, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you, and thank you all once again for watching. Till next time, I hope you all have a wonderful night.